Morning, everyone, and welcome to InFocus with Modena. We are just going to give it a couple of minutes so that we get a few attendees to join us, and then we'll start momentarily. We do have it filling up a little bit on the participant side. We'll just give it another minute or two, and then we'll start.
Just want to check while we have you guys on, can everyone hear us?
If you can just pop it in the chat section for us.
Maybe just a thumbs up.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. And we'll just give it another minute, and then we can kick off. Okay, guys, good morning, everybody, and welcome to InFocus with Modena. It is Friday today, and we are so excited to do this webinar for you guys. Today, we are going to be focusing on rendering interiors. With me, I have my two very smart colleagues. My name is Brooke LaRue. I'm a strategic key account manager for the ARC and ID team.
My name is Tabang Ramatsusa. I'm a design technology specialist at Modena for the ARC and ID team.
And I'm Rashali, and I'm also a design technology specialist for the ARC and ID team, and I'll be leading you guys through this webinar. Right, so let's just get started. Couple of housekeeping things. If you have any issues with the audio settings, and if you've joined on your phone, it might most likely be like a speaker thing there. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to pop it through on the chat. We've got Brooke who's going to keep an eye on the questions, and we'll either address them during or after. And the webinar is being recorded. So if you guys have any questions that, you couldn't really look into, whatever, you've got it here. All right. Content. Now, we are discussing interior rendering, and now this is a very common topic, and we've got probably millions of YouTube videos out now. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but we've got quite a few of them out that address this topic, like what's the tool, which tool should we use, and so on and so forth, and how do we use those tools. But we're going to start at the basics, right? We're going to talk about why do we render, the common questions around it, how to identify which tool is right for you, and that's a big one. The art of layering in terms of building your render up to what it needs to be, and post-production tool opportunities, right? First thing, why do we render? Now, it's a very basic question, but oftentimes we forget the fundamental side of it. Rendering is basically about communicating your design. It's about selling the vision. It's about validating the design decisions and collaborative processes. And of course, if you create a great render, it really sets you apart, like in a marketing side of it, right?
Yeah.
So because it again brings in this whole thing of like, we know what we're talking about in terms of our design, right? I'm assuming that a lot of you guys are designers on this chat, so quite excited to see what stuff pops up in the questions. All right. Now this is a common question, which I would like to actually ask you guys. What is the best rendering tool out there from your experience? Like, feel free to speak up. I think you should be able to chat, or just like, again,
Raise your hand,
speak.
Just you.
Yeah. Anyone? Don't be shy. Nobody? Okay, so I'm gonna redirect this question to Taban because he's also in this architectural field, and I do want to know from your perspective, what do you think is the best rendering tool out there and why?
I want to say Inkscape because it's my favorite one. But I would say mostly it depends on your workflow.
Yes.
So you get different tools that have different outcomes, and it really just depends on your workflow and the outcome you want to get from the
Yes,
specific tool. Yeah.
I think it's
agreed.
also a lot to do with user preference, because we do have a couple of clients that have the whole variety of software, and it just comes down to what users prefer. And also,
Yes.
you know, what is the timelines? Do you have enough
Yes.
time to spend on those renders, or do you need to get something out quick and fast? So I
Exactly.
think that's where we'll go into it a little bit in more
I
detail.
mean, you guys pretty much nailed it
100%.
because for me, again, there's no such thing as the best tool. It is all about how you use it, right? And to get to how you use it, you need to look at this kind of overview to understand what it is that you're trying to get. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with the term ikigai. If you're not, it's a Japanese term word that is about finding your purpose. It's a bit funny. I did think of this at 3 a.m. But the main thing to think about is, can you use this tool? And the time it takes, and money. Money's a big one, always, right? But these are the 3 things that I typically use to guide it. And then the overlaps are your workflow, purpose, and specifications. Specifications also prove to be a very important factor because a lot of these rendering tools require good laptop specs or PC specs.
Yeah.
You can't actually just operate, otherwise you have frequent crashes.
Mm.
Purpose addresses what is it that you're trying to communicate. Now, in the architecture side, because I'm an architect and we look at like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 in terms of the design development side of it, depending if you work with SACAP or Proxa. But with stage 1, you're looking at creating concept. Now, some people go as far as developing high-end renders for concept stage, and some say, well, you know what, a Revit 3D is sufficient.
Yeah.
Right. And to each their own, because at the end of the day, you need to know what the purpose is and if this is enough to communicate to your client for you and your client. Workflow is the other very, very important thing that helps me determine what it is that I'm using. So now Enscape is one of our favorites just because it's very BIM integrated, but we'll get into that a bit later. But to understand how your workflow is and how do you make it work for you essentially is very important, and that helps you understand which tool to use. Now, this slide does talk about certain tools in depth, but it's almost like comparing apples to apples in my mind. It's not necessarily the way. A lot of people and the guys who are very much just rendering look at different tools in a different way. For me, it's all about how does it work with Revit? Because that's the tool I use the most. And some people are like, okay, SketchUp or ArchiCAD, whatever. But for me, it's Revit. So anyway, so I looked at these tools first. Enscape, real-time, Lumion also real-time, Twinmotion as well. All of these tools actually, for me, very intuitive and easy to learn, all of them. Enscape, again, is very BIM integrated, hence it's my favorite. A lot of people do say, hey, it's not the best in terms of render quality compared to some other tools, but it's actually about the work you put into it. And I, by no means am an expert. I have given it a shot and I will still keep trying, but there are ways of making it better. But yeah, and then Lumion as well. It's like very stylized in my opinion. A lot of times, and I've worked with Lumion quite a bit before. Lumion is really great for concept, and they are like you can really push good interior renders with that as well. It also, because it's real time, it's fun to work with. It's a plugin on Revit, so you can see your changes made all the time. The good thing about Lumion and Twinmotion, because they essentially, for me, they work in a very similar way. There are differences, of course, but you know, similar for me. You've got movable objects, whereas for Enscape, and this is a big qualm for a lot of people, that you've got still objects and you can't have like a fire cackling or whatever. But yeah, that's again more basic stuff. But if anyone has any questions around it, you're most welcome to pop it in the chat. The next overview that I did.
We do have a question.
Oh, what do we have?
So the question is, how do different rendering tools compare, and what factors should we consider when choosing the right one for a project?
I mean, it goes back to the first thing we did discuss, right? Which is, what is it that you're using it for? What's your workflow, like money, time, all those different factors need to be considered before you can actually like, you know, determine what tool that you want to work with. But at the same time, actually just going back to that, usability, you should know how to use it.
Yeah.
And there is always a learning curve with whatever tool you select. I mean, again, talking about Twinmotion, Enscape, and Lumion, they're quite user-friendly. But if you kind of go in now to Corona and V-Ray and Chaos Vantage, like these are all Chaos products, actually.
Yeah.
Really fantastic ones. They're photorealistic products and stuff. When I say fantastic, I mean like in terms of really, if you're pushing the boundaries of creating a great image, this is probably going to be like my favorite kind of tools to get into. But it does require a lot of time. It does require really good specifications. There's a couple of other things to kind of consider. I think we have another question.
No?
Oh,
No.
just some links. Okay.
So yeah, there's a link in the chat for all the new Chaos products, like your Inkscape, Vantage, and so forth. So if you guys want to just check that out, you can do so.
Okay, happy days. Right, but I'm just going to move on from this because this is also a very like, again, complex kind of setup. A lot of people are intimidated by 3ds Max, but it's actually not as bad. We do offer courses on that and it's great.
Yeah.
But the integration of these tools are, it's great as well. And you can get any render to look as you need it to be with any of these tools that I've mentioned. It's a matter of the amount of work you put in. Okay. Now, I'm gonna go back to why I was like saying Enscape is great. This is my method and my why. It's very specific to, again, me as a user and why I like the tool. It's because it's very integrated with Revit. One of the things that I have an issue with, like with Lumion or any of the other tools, is because you're placing objects just in Lumion and not straight into, like if you place an object or an asset into Enscape, it reflects in Revit. Whereas if you just place it in Lumion, it stays in Lumion. And it saves out as an individual project, right? So there is that little qualm, but there are other things. Mainly, it actually gives control also to my model. So if you're working for a big company or you're working with a big company, it's a good idea to use Enscape because it keeps everyone's models clean as much as possible, because you, in a sense, forced to use the correct material and build it in a good way. I mean, it's very hard to cheat the system with it. I mean, you obviously, when you're choosing what kind of render that you're looking at doing and all of that, you don't have to show everything and you can hide stuff around. But like, again, if you're using the Revit drawings for production work, you want to keep it as clean as possible. And I do understand, like, design is fundamentally preferred out of Revit from a lot of architects, including myself. I like to sketch first, and then I like to bring it in and test it back and forth. So there is always going to be like a slightly messier thing, but it does get cleaned up when you're taking it into a render space, and you'll see just now. The last thing that I like to do is add like some Photoshop techniques. Still working out what the best settings would always be, but again, it's different for everyone. It's, again, what do you want to show? Are you trying to like bring in more shadow? You want to highlight something a little bit more? It's all dependent on that. All right, so what makes a render great? I mean, we've pretty much like looked at a few other topics earlier, but in my opinion, I mean, my grade is different. I'm satisfied with, getting it looking moody or whatever. And as long as it communicates the idea very clearly, I'm generally happy. And this is what I'm going to mainly focus on. And then again, like a little bit of like tips and trips and like some magic you can add in to make your space or render feel more connected. But again, it's about the level of development you're getting into. All right. So this is just like a little bit of my process. This is a project that I'm working on, actually like a home design that I'm trying to convince the client to actually spend money on. It's a bit of a personal one, so I won't get into that. It's just a matter of like, now this is where I'm like actively trying to sell the idea and make it very like tempting. Is this fun? Don't judge the designs. I know that everyone has different tastes, but it's fine. So when you first start off, you're building your base model, right? So obviously you're designing off paper maybe or whatever, but then you bring it into Revit or whatever other tool, you're building your base and you're trying to set up a couple of things. Then you add your materials, you set up your views, bring it into your rendering software, right? And then you start making it more and more moody. This is still, again, a little bit of a midway iteration of what I was creating. But yeah, this is typically the process that I like to see. It's about a layered approach, right? And there's always going to be a back and forth. At some point, you're going to be like, okay, well, I'm working in this space, and then I realize there's changes in the design. It's there's no like fixed way. It's just good to kind of look at it this way. I like to break it down into these two parts. There's lighting and composition in terms of how to make this render like really popping. So you've got under lighting, you've got materials, and we're going to touch on this. This is actually very interesting. The actual light source that you put in the model, diffuse colors, shadows, reflection, refractions, whatever there is to do with lighting that you need to bring in. And again, a lot of these things are related to materials. Then composition, it's another big thing. And again, a lot of you guys as designers would be familiar with the whole idea of creating good kind of composition based on what it is that you're trying to communicate. So rule of thirds, you've got symmetry, rule of odds, right? We're going to get into that just now. This again is just my attempt at going like, creating a specific kind of composition for the design that I'm trying to, communicate to my client. But the idea is to, centralize what is important, right? The rule of thirds, again, I won't get into it too much, but it's something to maybe look into a little bit more. But it's about keeping your main focal point in the middle, either the top, bottom, or like middle, right? And you can obviously find different ways of communicating it effectively, as long as your image is not janky. You also want to make sure that you're using your perspectives right, 2-point perspective, or if you want to like, stretch your image slightly, just make sure it's not like the scale and everything becomes very important in this whole thing as well. If you're looking at it and it looks all wonky, it's probably not going to come out great, because the client will be like, well, this doesn't look like what it is supposed to, or like, I don't understand this at all. Oftentimes clients also do struggle with that, which is, it's a common thing as a non-designer. Spaces are difficult to picture in your mind, and we've kind of been trained in that industry to understand how to work with that. Okay, so that's composition. It's a bit of an overview of it. Lighting, right? And this is specifically with regards to materials. So now, I don't know if anyone online has heard of PBR materials. Anyone, maybe thumbs up would be great. Because then I just also kind of know, like, no one? Okay, Tabang, have you heard of PBR? No, I'm just kidding. So PBR is physical-based rendering, right? So it's about how the light touches the material itself. And that adds to a lot more depth to the material that you are going to be rendering. And this is a new thing that, well, new relatively from 2019, Revit has sort of allowed for more PBR material properties to kind of come in. So like the maps and all of that have been brought in. So you'll see like before you've got like a simple diffuse map and maybe like a specular and like a little bit of roughness. I think there was roughness. I'm really not sure about that. I just knew it was very flat. And then you kind of go into PBR, which has all these other maps. And now why it's categorized under lighting is because all your materials are constructed out of light. So all the maps are basically different light tools that either give it like a little bit of depth, roughness. So if you think about a normal map, you've actually got like your RGB values. And that allows for like either more height, if it's going to the left, if it's going to the right, in terms of the texture, and it adds the shadows accordingly. And then you've also got a ambient occlusion map. And now this is again a very powerful one. So if you've got like bricks and you've got grouting or tiles, the grouting essentially like, set back the way you need it to be. So if you're doing like a face brick render, your ambient occlusion is like actually a very nice map to work with, and it gives that depth and value, right? All right. Any questions so far? I know I'm like, no,
Nothing as yet.
Nothing as yet. I'm assuming I'm just very clear. Right. And this is an example of like, this is an Autodesk example that shows like what it was before. Now this is rendered on Autodesk Cloud Rendering. So it's not a specific tool that we've really discussed, but again, you can see very clearly the difference that exists because of PBR materials. I mean, automatically I'm more drawn towards this. More drawn towards this render, the one on the right versus the one on the left. Right. Okay. Now the next thing is just a little showcase of my render and how spicy it is. Okay. Lighting. Now this is more your light source. With Enscape, the more light sources you have, you see I left on like a little lamp on the left side, and you can see there's a light source also existing with a laptop asset that's there. But your main lighting, if you don't really add lighting in the space, you're not really going to get the most out of it. And these are just your light sources, and it adds a mood to the space. I mean, already with that lamp, it feels really nice in that little corner.
Yeah.
But then in this space, it's like, okay, I don't know what the heck's happening. I've just entered my home and I didn't switch on the light. That's kind of what's it's looking like. But if you go in and you add some light, you add some moodiness, you add something, obviously you want it to be accurate. I'm not saying go and add lights wherever just to make it feel something.
It's not a stadium.
It's not a stadium, but you want to make sure that it's actually, again, capturing the essence of your design as much as possible. And there are moments where you have to add like a light source to, if the exposure isn't enough or whatever, to make it like pop a little. But again, that wouldn't be your moody lights. These are more like, because they're intentionally placed, they've got the correct IES files loaded into them. So it's actually got a very accurate reading on like what it would feel like in a lot of instances, which is great. I did hype it up a little bit, and you could probably see with the strip lighting, it's a bit more than I would have liked, because I didn't put an IES there. This is more based on like my whole thing. But that's kind of, again, it's about finding the right balance, what works for you, what doesn't. There's another method called the plant method, which a lot of people are like quite infamous and famous for. It goes both ways. People dump plants and renders willy-nilly. Now, from an interior perspective, and because I come from an architectural background, I don't really go into like the interiors of it as much as I am now. Like I actually quite enjoy that. But as far as I'm aware, like you can't just like put in plants wherever and assume that the client's going to get them. It just makes the space look full. You also want to be a little bit more like,
Realistic.
yeah, you want to be realistic about it. You do want to make it look great, but you don't want to overwhelm your client with popping plants. But that being said, plants do look great. So you have to find the little balance. Is it just enough? I mean, in my case, I would want to show the client, maybe it's an option to have hanging plants, and that's when I'd add it in, right? I want this big pot plant here for a specific reason, whatever feng shui thing or whatever you want to get into, right? I don't know. But yeah. Now, the last little bit that I want to talk about is post-production. Now, oftentimes, again, like Enscape isn't always considered the most powerful, so hence you need to get into post-production. Again, I have not put in as much work into these renders that I typically I typically do, but this is, again, enough. I mean, you guys can vote and say like, hey, actually, this is really bad. You should really put some more effort. But if you want to take it a step further, there are several other methods of doing so. So this is a little bit of a before. So obviously like what you guys have been seeing, and then an after. This does make it pop a little. It's a little bit more yellow than I was kind of going for it, to be honest. But it does add that depth, the shadow, the material clarity, a little bit more of like reflection on the floor. So it's things like that that would help you. And I used Photoshop for this. There's obviously Photoshop can go very far. The more time you spend on it, the more you can get out of it. And that's what I'm essentially getting at with the whole idea of rendering in interiors. But yeah, I think that's essentially it.
We do have a question from one of the participants. What role does AI play in this? And what is the best way to work with AI to produce a great render?
Ooh, I'm actually, again, I know the audience has been very quiet, but I'm so curious to know, like, do people actively use AI to produce their renders or not? I mean, again, a thumbs up would be great to see if anyone, like literally for concept, do you guys plug in information into AI and then which like Midjourney or whatever to produce a concept design, or like is it more post-production for them?
Yeah, basically, at what stage
Yes.
did you guys use AI? We obviously have our own opinions and we will share.
But if they say you
just like to hear at what stage would you use AI, because there are several AI rendering tools. But of course, for different use cases, you would use them at different stages. So let's give it to the audience a bit. Do you want to comment in the meantime?
Okay, we have one answer. Haven't found the right tool yet.
Haven't found the right tool. Oh, okay. I mean, there's so many at this point. It just feels like I did a talk last year with for our what are insights?
Insights,
It was. And it was about AI versus architect, and I did a competition with the AI tools that existed, and it was more like which one's better. Ultimately, I found that if you are doing a concept and you want to get quick ideas, it works the same as Pinterest for me. So then I just like, Midjourney was great for that. It was a lot of fun. It is paid for, which sucks, but there are other unpaid for tools,
Yeah.
right? And then I also, what did I use last year? Oh yeah, and then I did a design. So I actually took on a competition. So similar to like how I did a design, I'm showcasing you guys my stuff here. I did the same thing then. And I was like, okay, well, let's see if I put in the same kind of prompts that I've been working with and the same competition brief into Midjourney, and I think it was Comfy and a couple of others. What does it produce and is it better? And then, you've got to be a bit careful with AI because it can jibbo the work. If you really look into it, and a lot of times, again, if you're a student and you're using AI for it and it doesn't relate back to your plans, your lecturers are not going to be happy with you.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be realistic.
I'm in support of that.
Yeah.
So AI, I think you touched on it as well, is a great tool for idea generation or concept generation.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because how you work with it is called prompt engineering, right? So when you prompt an AI, if you use the same prompt twice, you're going to get two different sets of results. People who have actually worked with AI can actually comment on this or back me up on this. So you could literally say, render this interior to look like an avant-garde type of architecture design. If you do it with two iterations with the same AI, you're actually going to get two different results. So the results are actually not consistent with what the outcomes you would want to get. So for concept generation, I think, like you mentioned, very great tool. How you work with it, you really have to get into prompt engineering and learning how to prompt properly. There's something also called thread building, whereby you actually direct your AI to the outcome that you want. So basically, design a house that is like 4 bedrooms and and actually you build on that. I want to use wooden material for the cornices, and I want to use this for, so you actually have to build that thread to actually get to the outcome. But again, that outcome is never the same with the exact same prompts. So we just use AI for concept generation and post-production.
Yeah, post-production. I mean, you can plonk in your render in a couple of these tools. I think Comfy is actually one of my favorites. You can put the render in and say you want it to be exactly this, and you just want to add a little bit more of a flair to it, or shadows or lighting needs to be a bit more specific, and it would pop up quite nicely. And I should have actually done that here. It would have been great. But yeah, like there's a lot of, again, powerful ways of integrating it. It's just about working with it the right way and knowing your limits.
I think it's good for like a draft of it, but then it still requires some input
100%,
from you there.
100%.
Yeah.
So these tools still offer you, you get to the desired outcome that the client would want, and not some form of iteration of what the client would want. I did see a hand up in the chat. I think it's Mary or something.
You can just pop your question in first. And there is another question as well.
Okay.
What common mistakes do designers make when rendering? And how can we improve our workflows to achieve better results?
I mean, there's several ways. I think the common mistakes are oftentimes just not putting enough information in and not detailing your stuff enough, and understanding again what it is that you're trying to show. Goes back to the very first question. Are we trying to show, like, again, am I trying to show an entire living room, or am I just trying to show the kitchen? And where do I put my focus in? Am I detailing the wrong elements? Bringing in the right amount of scale? Like I touched on, like the whole planting thing. If you kind of overdo it with planting, it becomes a bit of a issue. I mean, you want to just be, again, realistic. You don't want to put in the wrong kinds of things. You want to just enhance it a little bit more. But yeah, those are typically the common mistakes. I mean, again, lighting plays another big role. So you put lighting in the wrong places, it just doesn't really give you a realistic feel of the space. And that's quite important to a client, because I've actually had a client come back and say, well, this is a bit intense. Is it really always going to be like on like this? And you're like, well, actually, probably shouldn't have showcased it like this. I should have thought about, what the client would also like to know and understand from it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to scoping and maybe also just showing like what different views you get, like your daytime versus your nighttime views and stuff like that. So you can
Yes,
show
of
the
course.
difference.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've done a few of those. You've got your little nighttime view again to give them an idea of the space or whatever.
Ambience.
Yeah. I mean, happy days. And there's another question, I think. Oh no.
So I didn't see anything else.
Whoever had their hands up, I mean, you can just go for it again. No one? All right. I don't know if you guys maybe want to have a look at how an Enscape model actually looks. It won't be like a demonstration of how to use it entirely. I think, that's a whole other lesson, which becomes, you've got to put time aside for this. But I can show you guys again, like how the interface typically works. Just give me a second.
I think that'll be great.
Yeah.
While she opens the model, there is a link in the chat for our core competency programs. So that basically you could do what she's about to show you.
Yeah, but it's just, again, it's a really great tool that you can use to create the kind of views that you want. I have removed some things, I've been playing around with it, just to test out a couple of more things for the client. And, it's been a very interesting thing to kind of compose this design together, like come up with the whole idea and communicate it most effectively with Enscape, because these are the drawings that I want to take into costing, and it becomes very easy now because I've built it up all the right way. I've got the right materials, I've built in tags. Again, depends on how intuitive you want to be. And with Enscape, again, you can get like whole idea of like how you want your lighting and all of that to go. I have removed some of the lights here. I'm going to see if I can switch them back on. Oops.
I think it's also a great tool to give a client a walkthrough as well.
Oh yeah,
You can switch to VR if that's required.
Yes, definitely. Actually,
really makes it a bit more
you can
realistic for your
actually,
client. Yeah.
that's very true, because I mean, with VR, you can actually step into the model. It feels like you're in it. You can understand the scale. Again, like anyone who's not sure of how the space feels, it's really, really fantastic. One of the, it's a downside, but it's also an upside. With VR, you've got to make sure you've got the right specs. And then the other thing is you've got to design your entire space. If you're going to give your client this model to walk through in, your entire space should be designed. Unlike for me, I just needed to focus in on this space, and I'm not worried about what's happening behind doors. So I've got everything just built up inside. And again, this comes down to scope. What is it that we're looking at? I mean, I'm focused on this interior space. I'm not really thinking about any other space. I don't really have to build anything else up. I mean, the last thing you want to do is actually present this to your client and say, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
What does this look like? This is fun. But while I'm here in the space, does anyone have any Enscape related questions that maybe I can answer?
So while we're waiting for the chat, I could maybe just pose one as well that we've quite had a lot of debates about in the industry, is what level of detail do you need to render? Do you render down to the door handles, down to the bolts? Or what would you say? What level of detail?
I would say as far as you need to go for the client to understand, right? And it also depends on what stage you're at. Like this for me is like a stage 1/2 where I'm figuring out materials and dealing with stuff. Again, my deliverables are renders in the beginning, because I know that the clients usually get drawn in from that. The detail comes in if you are a rendering company. Yeah, right. If your sole job is to create these very high end renders and detailed renders, that's when it comes in. And then I'll like build up everything. I mean, even here, to some people, and this was just a few of my friends that I was chatting with over the last few days, even adding this little like bevel on the sides is like a bit more like it's unnecessary detail for them. It's just like, oh, well, we'll just do like a flat panel and that showcases the idea enough. And for me, it's like, well, it takes it a step further because I've considered this in the design and this is how I see it. So whatever's happening in my mind, I want to communicate it as effectively and as clearly as possible in this. Otherwise, I know that even I won't be confident when I'm expressing this design agenda to the client.
Yeah.
Right.
And just from your client's perspective, I mean, it's fairly easy to add details in. So if they're having a look at this, it's very quick to add certain things, change
Yeah.
materials, change colors. I mean, it's very user-friendly in that sense.
It is. It's very much user-friendly. And it becomes again like a very engaging tool.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, that's basically my answer to them. Any other fun questions for me?
No, thank let's wait for the comments to see if there's any questions for that.
I'm going to shift this off.
There is another one that came through. It says, what techniques can we use to make renders feel more immersive and realistic for clients?
I mean, again, I think actually touches back to what Tabang says. It's
Yeah.
the details. It's how much work you put in. It's about the lighting. It's about the composition. It really comes down to that. I mean, your materials can be as flat as possible. So like one of the things to look at here, let me just share this again. Sorry.
Yeah,
Which one?
just go a few slides back.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
I think
there we
this
go.
actually touches really nice.
Oh, yeah.
On that,
Yeah.
lighting, composition, materials, and so forth. Yeah.
And again, it's just about how much you want to put into it. I mean, for myself, I kind of looked at, I don't really want to get into too much detail, but I still want to give an idea, a fairly good idea of what the client will be getting at the end of the day, colors and all of that stuff. I have a tendency of going into detail if I can.
Yeah.
It's time dependent.
It's
And again,
harder,
Yeah.
of course.
and which never really does.
Yeah.
It never, ever, ever does when you're working on a project. You're always just chasing the deadline and you're just like, oh no, and then you're on to the next one.
Yeah.
But I would like to have detailed this whole step thing a bit better. And how does this connect to the wall? And so on and so forth. I mean, those are little things that starts to add value to the space and to the render. But yeah. Oh.
Okay, we have another one over here. It says, does Inkscape have free versions? And how much does it cover in terms of this detailing? So there is a trial version available that you are able to look at. If I'm correct, it's about a 14-day trial version. We can share that link through with you as well. So it just gives you that option to play around with it. And then after that, it does become a paid for subscription. So you do get your fixed costing that is for your like single user, and then you also get a floating option, which is quite great.
Yeah.
So a lot of our clients that we deal with, they often opt for the floating version, because that does mean that, like, let's say Tabang needs to use it today for a project he's working on, and maybe for Charlie will only need to use it next week, so that they can, share that license between the two.
Yeah.
So there are those options available, but there is a trial version for you to play with.
Yeah. And sorry, if you don't mind elaborating on how much does it cover in terms of this detailing?
So you get full access.
Yeah.
So you're not limited with the trial version at all. It gives you all the tools that is available.
Yeah, perfect. There's also something called Impact for Inkscape. And if there's anyone who's like focused on sustainability on this chat, they'd be super interested. It's a different subscription, but it does basically showcase the different energy aspects of the building itself. And again, it's how you model it. So this whole thing with Revit and working with that as a tool becomes very important, because the moment you start your Revit project out correctly, and again, those in the BIM environment and people working on large scale projects would know this, that you have to place your project in the right place, right? Coordinates are very important. Hence location plays a big role in this. And then that also feeds into the data that you get from Impact. It's like, again, literally just a button that you press, and it gives you like a idea of where you've got your heat, your cooling stuff happening in your building, and things to consider.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Any more questions from the audience?
feel like I want to pick on audience members just for fun.
Go
I'm
for it.
kidding.
What are the other alternatives to Inkscape? If you're okay with it, how do they compare?
All right. So I'm just going to go back here. There are a lot of good alternatives, right? So you've got Lumion, you've got Twinmotion. Lumion is great. Again, it is super expensive.
Yeah.
Right. Again, like it is, there's a lot of positives to it. And the biggest negative for me is the price. It's actually double, I think, of what Enscape is, if I'm not mistaken.
It's not triple, yeah.
Oh, they're great.
Yeah.
And Twinmotion is also a really great tool. Then there's also DeFi. Twinmotion comes free with your AEC collection.
And your Revit subscription
And your
as
Revit.
well. Yeah.
Oh, free with it.
Yeah.
Don't you have to pay like a
No.
little? Oh, great. So if
it's
you've got a,
complimentary tickets. Yeah.
there you go. So it's complimentary. If you've got Revit, you've got Twinmotion, and you can actually use it, and it's great. I've worked with it minimally, but I have worked with it, and I do find it great. Both of all of these tools, it's about how much work you put into it.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of YouTubers talk about this, where Twinmotion is like the best. Oh, and then there's D5. I've never worked with D5. I've heard it's really great.
Yeah.
I've heard it's great, but at the same time, it all comes down to how you use the tool.
100%.
But alternatives, a good alternative to Enscape would be Twinmotion if you've got Revit. Lumion, again, if you're feeling like that's something you want to invest in, it's also great. But yeah, besides Enscape, if you're talking more on the relation with Revit, Enscape is your best bet. And then there's V-Ray. V-Ray is also like a plugin with Revit. And you do also need to build your model in the right way in order to get the right information across. But yeah, I think those are basically the main tools that I would look at.
Could we include Blender into this group of softwares?
Yes, I actually took it out of I had a whole page of this. I was like, I'm going to talk way too much
Yeah.
going to Blender. Blender's great. It's an open source, so free, right?
Yeah.
Huge learning curve. So if you know 3ds Max, Blender is actually going to work well. But if you don't really know it, it does take some time to get into. But Blender is fantastic. It is a bit of a different environment though. So you've got to know the interface is different. You're dealing with like a couple of other tools. And again, the rendering process is slightly different. I kind of equate it a little bit with Unreal. It's not the same at all, like in terms of interface, but the outcome or like the way I sort of work with it feels similar. So if you guys have worked with Unreal Engine, you know, like again, what I'm talking about, but it's gamer mode for me, actually. You kind of go into slight game mode, and then Blender is great for animations. Fantastic. I mean, I think there was recently an award-winning animation that was done on Blender from like start to finish, it's really, really great. But it comes down to, again, do you want to learn it?
Yeah, higher learning curve.
Higher learning curve for sure.
I've actually seen it for furniture design. Blender would.
It's actually quite great because it's a
Yeah.
fluid tool like 3ds Max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We have another one.
Yes.
Can I get access to your presentation in PDF
Oh,
form?
PDF,
or
sorry.
something? Yeah.
We are recording this session, so you will definitely have
Yeah.
access to it. Yeah, so don't worry about it.
100%. So it will be on our website as well, so you will be able to get access to it.
All right. Can I say please like and subscribe?
Anything else from the team or participants before we hop off?
We
Can
happy
we go
days?
to
We're done?
the last one on our side?
Okay, so the fun part for you guys, I would really like if you guys could give me some feedback and tell me what I could do better, or if you liked it, if you want some more information, reach out. This is also a great way to reach out to us. If you want to inquire about any of the products, we do sell Enscape, right?
Yeah.
And Chaos products as well. All Chaos products.
And Motion as well.
And
It
if you
is
need
available on
workshops,
standalone,
it's also
and
great.
in your Revit.
Yeah. So yeah, like I'm gonna, which QR code? This one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna go over to the next one, it is also on there. So
Perfect.
it is over on the left side.
Yes.
And then just a couple of things from our side. We are running a host or series of webinars. So these are the dates for the next upcoming ones. If you guys just want to take a screen grab from this, it is available on our website as well. But we'd love for you guys to join in on the next ones we have coming up.
Great. Right, I think that's
Anything
it.
else from your guys' side?
No, unless anyone has any other questions. I mean, we still have some time. No?
I think we are all good to go. Thank you so much, everyone, for your
Thanks.
time, for all the questions, and thank you for being engaging. It's been really fantastic to have you with us, and we really, really hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend ahead. Easter is coming up, so yeah, let's get in on that chocolate, and happy Friday, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.
Cheers, bye.